My name is Virginia. I'm 74 years old and I've lived a lot in this life. But nothing prepared me for what happened on that Mother's Day. Tell me something. Have you ever received a gift that, instead of affection, came with a cruelty that made you feel like you were a nuisance? As if the person you loved the most had forgotten everything you did for them. It may seem impossible, but that's what I experienced. A simple card showed me, in a blatant way, that I was no longer seen as a mother. But as a weight, and the cruelest. It was delivered by the hands of my own daughter. I know that many people come here asking, how can a daughter do this to her own mother? And I understand. I have asked myself this question so many times. The truth is that when we love too much, we end up going blind. And he only notices the cracks when the whole house has already collapsed. But today, I'll tell you everything. And if you stay with me until the end, you will understand how a simple Mother's Day card can become a sentence. And why? That night, my phone rang 17 times in a row, and I didn't answer any. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Not every gift comes with love inside. Sometimes he carries scorn wrapped in pretty paper. In the middle of Mother's Day lunch, in front of my entire family, my daughter held out a pink card to me, saying that her grandchildren had helped to do it. He asked me to read it aloud, and I, as always, obeyed. No, but what I read, no one should have to listen, much less from those who gave birth, raised and supported with their own bodies. The words cut me like a knife, and the laughter that followed showed me that this was not an accident. It was a message. And even today, when I close my eyes, I hear every syllable as if it had been yesterday. If you've come this far, nation down. Maybe because you've already felt this pain hidden behind the smiles of a family that only looks for you when you need it. So, stay with me. This story is not just mine. It is of many. And if she touches something inside your heart, I ask with all humility, leave your like, subscribe here to the channel now, not by numbers, but so I know that I am not alone telling this. Sometimes, all we need is to feel that someone on the other side understands. I remember well the morning of that Sunday. The skies of Savannah were clear, almost cloudless, and it was that gentle heat that only spring in Georgia knows how to bring. I had gotten up early, taken my shower calmly, and put on my lavender dress, the same one I wore at Mac's christening, my eldest grandson. I took the lemon cake I made with my grandmother's recipe, which I passed on to my mother, and then to me, and put the children's gifts in an embroidered cloth bag. As he drove to Richmond Hill, he felt his heart pounding anxiously. Today is going to be a good day. I thought, today I will feel loved. When I parked in front of Laura's house, I saw balloons hanging from the porch, a banner with gold letters reading Happy Mother's Day, but it didn't say to whom. I stayed there for a second inside the car, holding the steering wheel, looking at that impersonal decoration. I took a deep breath. It's just a detail, I said to myself. Max was the first to appear. He ran up to me with that toothless smile and hugged me by the legs. Emily followed close behind. You're not had in boarding cow. I'm touched in hakchi. Her hair tied in a pink bow. Grandma, he shouted. Oh, as always. And only there, in the middle of that hug, did I feel that I was in the right place. But then Peter showed up. He didn't cow. Hey, so good morning. He had his cell phone in his hand. Ah, as always, he passed me. Ah, mumbling something, and entered. I thought it was strange, but I tried to reveal it. Laura came out of the kitchen with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He came to hug me and said, Mom, hey, I'm glad you came. That bothered me. I'm glad you came. Oh, as if it were an obligation fulfilled. He didn't say he was happy, or that he missed me. He said only what was necessary. I entered with the children pulling my hand and went straight to the kitchen. I wanted to help, as I always did. Mom, you don't need to. We've already taken care of everything, she said. I walked away, went to the living room with Max on my lap. I saw a beautiful table, tidy, but with nothing that reminded me. There was not a flower, a napkin, a souvenir that said, "Moon, huff, up, and this is for you." Peter stayed on the couch the whole time, playing with his cell phone. No job. He didn't even look up to talk to me. And when I tried to talk to Emily about the new doll she got, I accidentally spoke in Spanish, as I did with Laura when she was little. Emily laughed and repeated the phrase, happy, but Laura, in a dry tone, said, oh, Mom, please, try to speak English with them. They confuse it. That cut me off, as if my way of being, of educating, of loving, now was inconvenience. I sat in the corner of the room, trying to find my place in that house I helped build, not with bricks, but with every extra shift of work, with every sleepless night, with every plate of food I put in front of that daughter. No. And there, this, as I watched the three of them busy, I felt like a visitor. A tolerated visit? No. There are times when the silence of the people screams inside. We smile, pretend that everything is fine. But inside, we are cowering, asking, what? Just see me. Just see me. It was at that moment that a sadness came to me so deep that I don't even know where it came from. I looked around and thought, am I exaggerating? Am I too sensitive because of my age? But after everything that happened, I learned that when our hearts feel, it's because they're right. We only try to suppress it because it hurts too much to accept that we are no longer loved where we have always been needed. If you've ever felt this, that feeling of being present, but invisible, leave a word here in the comments. He writes, I've lived it or it touched me. No. Sometimes we think we're alone in this pain. But when you read a similar comment, it seems that your heart finds shelter. And look, what in now, under our city second. That feeling was not an exaggeration of mine. It was a premonition, because what happened next, in that same room, in front of everyone, was the biggest wound I've ever received in my entire life. And she came with a pink bow, inside an envelope, with the children's names on the front. When Laura got up from the table and went to her bag, I thought she was going to get a souvenir, a little surprise, maybe an old photo of the children, a drawing, a word of affection. She came back with a light pink envelope in her hands and a forced smile, the kind you realize isn't born from the heart. The children did it for you. Read it out loud. He said, placing the envelope in my hands with a gesture too light to be sincere. I looked at the paper with a warmth in my chest, a mixture of emotion and hope. On the front, drawn with a marker, Listen, so not turn a child you. There were trembling hearts, colorful scribbles, and my name written in crooked letters. To Grandma Virginia. I held it like someone holding a piece of love, or what I thought was love. I carefully opened the envelope. Took a deep breath and began to read. Roses are red, the violets are blue. I smiled tenderly, imagining Max and Emily choosing the words. But on the next line, my heart stopped. You're a burden. Nobody wants you. For a second, Leo, I thought I read it wrong. Sidya, I blinked, reread, and the words were there. I did not come. Raw, dry, cold as a stone in the chest. The room was muted. An icy silence took over the table. Until Peter let out a laugh, as if he couldn't hold the joke anymore. My God. Nani dearie. Her face. None. Wow. He said between laughs. Laura tried to hide her mouth with her hand, but I saw it. She was laughing too, a muffled, almost childlike laugh, as if having fun with the pain of others. The children, I catch a night to boy up, calm down, a balloon sip a while, without understanding anything, laughed along. They laughed because the adults were laughing. They laughed as if it were a cartoon scene. And I, sitting there with that card still in my hand, felt my face burn. Her cheeks warmed, her eyes filled, her throat closed. I trembled. He trembled inside and out. I tried to keep my composure. Looked at the plate, once, looked at my hands, took a deep breath, but the shame flowed in tear form before I could stop it. It's just a joke, Mom, said Laura, with that tone that mixes irony and contempt. Don't take it that seriously. You've always been so sensitive. Peter took the card from my hand. Well, you walked down, still laughing, and added, but, you know, Grace, there's a little bit of truth in this, right? My name wasn't even Grace, and yet he spoke as if I were an invented character. I faked a smile, swallowed hard, and stood there, silent, No, as I always did. N- You know we're kidding. They, Nan said, she sang her now, Padababa. I saw it all horrible. Laura continued, well, but it was too late. What had been said was said, Li Wang. What was laughed at was felt, and what is broken inside, sometimes not even time can fix. I couldn't eat anything else. I moved the rice, pushed the vegetables, drank the water slowly. The kids ran to the backyard after dessert, and Laura followed. There was Siwang. I was alone with Peter, who went back to his cell phone as if nothing had happened. I looked at the living room wall, at the children's paintings, at the vase on top of the sideboard, trying to hold the ends of my heart. But everything there screamed that I no longer belonged in that house. When Laura returned, she asked me disdainfully, "Is everything okay?" "Mom, you were so quiet all of a sudden. I wanted to say so many things, but I just shook my head because I knew that if I spoke, I would collapse. And there, uh, in the middle of that house, where so many times I washed the dishes, made a bottle, told bedtime stories, my heart. There I realized I was no longer a part of it. I was an uncomfortable presence, a weight, a burden. And now that was written, now sealed, well, child, circumcised, delivered with pink ribbon and all. But what they didn't know, what no one imagined, is that humiliation was the last time I accepted being treated as invisible. Because what came next? Oh, no one. Oh, my chance. What came next? No one expected it. Do you think that was the worst? So wait and see what happened when I got home that night. Because the real story, it only started there. I stayed there for a while longer, sitting on the wooden bench in the garden, as if waiting for someone to come after me to apologize, or at least ask if I'm okay. But no one came. The children screamed and ran around the yard as if nothing had happened. Peter passed me with a glass of soda in his hand. Wow. He didn't even look me in the eye. He only said, how, as if commenting on the weather. Riache Diorwag. Nothing personal. Mrs. Well, how? Virginia? It's just modern humor. You know, I just shook my head because I didn't even have the strength to say what it really was. Cowardice, disguised as a joke. And when I realized that I was completely alone, I got up. I walked slowly down the side of the house, grabbed my bag I had left on the couch, and headed towards the door. No, had to sifa dedikesuab, and saw Laura saw me. She was in the corner of the kitchen. Nana no del gale. Ni still wear the copper force, checking her cell phone. Wine tapped in on oil, and said without raising her eyes, "Are you going?" "Mom, we were going to take a picture later," I replied with a dry yes, and she didn't even bother to accompany me to the door. I just said, "Call me later. Why not support into no chow? Understood. I'd suggest us. Okay? Happy Mother's Day." And he went back to typing. Oh, I left that house as if I were leaving a wake. But What had died there was not a person. It was the last hope I had of still being seen as a mother. The drive from Richmond Hill to Savannah has never seemed so long. The car was silent. Ah, and so was I. The radio turned off. My, series there. The hands on the wheel. Lida, out. Nergorsigmish, Lida. But the distant thought. I went over each scene in my head, trying to understand at what point everything had become that. Where did I get lost? When I got home, I parked, went in. Why, how? Locked the door. Nay, I took off my shoes, right there at the entrance. The lavender dress hung on the living room chair until the next day. I went straight to my armchair, the blue velvet one, already half worn out in my arms, where I once cradled Laura as a baby, where I read cookbooks, where I prayed all night when she was sick. I sat there, kneeling down, and only then did I cry, first in silence, as if holding back the tears so as not to make noise within their own loneliness. Then, in sobs that I could no longer contain. It was a cry that came from an old, deep place, a lament that was not just for the card, nor for the laughter. It was because of everything that came before, and that, at that moment, finally fell on me. The dinners I prepared, and she cancelled at the last minute. The gifts that I delivered with so much affection and were left in a corner. The visits she failed to make without explanation. And that last Christmas, when I arrived with a box of souvenirs and was treated as a programming error. It was as if all the sorrows had set a time and chosen that day to charge everything. When the crying stopped, one back, what it is, the emptiness remained, a quiet, icy emptiness that spread through the house. I wrapped myself in a blanket, even though it wasn't cold. I just wanted to feel embraced by something. I turned on the lamp in the living room, but I didn't turn on anything else. I stood there, with the light dim, staring at nothing, until I looked at the old piece of furniture in the corner, where I keep my letters, my documents, my memories. I stared at that drawer as if she had something to say to me, and suddenly, I knew. The answer was not in what happened that day. It was in what I let happen in recent years. It was in that armchair, wise and surrounded by silence and remembrance, that I began to remember. Not only remembering the moments, but remember me. And when a woman begins to remember who she was, no one holds back what comes next, because it was there that something began to change. But before you tell you what I did after that night, you need to know where this pain comes from, and everything I had ever given to that daughter. Do you know how many times we swallow hurt in the name of the family? Well, the time has come to choke, and I'm going to start from the beginning. That morning, alone in my living room, and vice job, my head leaning against the blue velvet armchair and my chest still heavy from what I experienced on that Mother's Day. I closed my eyes and let the memories in. And when the memory opens the door, my daughter? Nay, there is no way to control what comes. I found myself 19 again, bare feet on the cold floor of the small apartment in Savannah, dressed as a bride with a simple bouquet in her hands and my heart full of plans. I married Antonio on a cloudy September afternoon. He was Puerto Rican, had an easy smile and a strength in his eyes that made me believe that together, we could handle the world. And we did. Oh, for a while. We gave it. We work hard. He washed dishes at a restaurant on River Street and worked as a painter on weekends. I sewed nos, first at home, then in a studio, then in a small uniform factory. Laura came 2 years later, a small angel with dark hair and curious eyes. Antonio cried when she was born. Listilio. I said she was going to be a nurse because she had hands to take care of her. And I, lying there in the hospital bed, swore that she would never lack anything, neither love, nor food, nor presence, but life. Ah, Neribino. Life has plans of its own. When Laura was only 7 years old, Antonio had a massive heart attack and fell dead in the backyard. In the middle of any given Sunday, how? I was in the kitchen making cornbread. The ambulance took a long time, but it was too late, and I didn't have time to mourn. With a young daughter to raise and a house to hold, I went straight to the war of survival. I started working twice as hard. Mom. I sewed in the morning in a school uniform store, and in the evening in a laundry room that let me take the fabrics home. On Sundays, she made sweets to sell at the neighborhood market. Milk pudding, guayaba empanadillas, buttery cookies that she learned from her neighbors. Every penny that came in, I saved. Every blouse I tore, I sewed. Every assignment at Laura's school, I reviewed even with eyes burning with fatigue. And do you know why? Because I believed that one day, she would look at me and see everything I did, everything I was. When she turned 17 and said she wanted to study nursing at Georgia State, my eyes filled with pride, but also of fear. The monthly fee was high. The enrollment was a value that I did not have. And it was then that I made a difficult decision. I sold my grandmother's engagement ring. It was the only valuable jewel I had left. An antique gold ring with a faded blue pebble that had passed through 3 generations. But at that moment, I thought, what is a jewel compared to my daughter's future? Sold Libanadstedmion Afanai, and I paid the registration. I saw Laura enter that university with her eyes shining. She hugged me and said, "Mom, I would be nothing without you." And that, just that, paid for every night of bad sleep. But today, looking back, I wonder where this love became an obligation. In what corner of life did my presence stop being affection and became a nuisance? Because I kept giving, even after she grew up, and she took it out, piece by piece, until what was left of me was just this silent lady that you are listening to now. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with all the open wounds. And if you're listening to me, I am a Boris not when upstairs on my trial. If any of this touched you in any way, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. It's not by number. Well, it's for me to know that there's someone on the other side. That there are people who still believe that a real mother does not deserve to be forgotten. But what you still don't know is that what I did for Laura, it didn't stop there. Her wedding, her house, even the nanny she said she couldn't afford. Wow, everything passed through my hands. And yes, no quite sure. She had the courage to laugh at that card, but I remembered everything. And when the memory wakes up, she does not go back to sleep. Want to know how much a mother can give before being discarded? Wait to see what I still have to tell you. Laura's wedding was beautiful. Yes, I'm not going to lie. She was wearing that white dress with fine lace, the same one we saw in a window in Savannah, and she said, "Hum Diamond." Oh, Mom, only in a dream. And I said, I Tom. Then let's make this dream happen. I took $7,000 from my savings, plus $5,000 from a fund I was saving for the health emergency, and handed it to her without blinking. It's a money, Mom. Nice, she said, nearly simple sound. And I smiled. Because at that time I still thought that giving was the same thing as being remembered. I helped at the party, made souvenirs by hand, prepared typical sweets. I even made empanadilla de guayaba, just to honor her father. Millionaires, what can you just on short pictures, who wasn't there to see it. Lioness a wonder, Niseo Kama, Cowley and Sipcare. Peter, now, the groom, has always been polite, but with that tone of someone who thinks you talk too much and understand too little. She called me Mrs. Virginia with a forced smile, as if treating a boring client. I realized, but he swallowed hard. Laura was happy, and that was what mattered. After the wedding, the distancing began slowly. Wow. Before, Nadir went out. She called me every day. Then he started calling every other day. Then, once a week. When they bought the house in Richmond Hill, she showed me excited photos, saying that she had found the place of her dreams, but he did not tell that they would not get entry. He only came to tell me when he already had the papers almost lost. Mom, the only thing missing is the signal. Peter has not yet received the bonus from the company. We're trying, but if it's not now, we lose. And I, as always, was the mattress of the fall. I took $25,000 from the retirement fund that was saved for the renovation of my house. I passed it on to them, one like an Ogorsawa, without demanding anything. I just asked her not to tell anyone. Me? Stay between us. I said, it's the last time I touch this money. Little did I know that it would be just the beginning. When the grandchildren were born, I became a nanny. Not officially, of course, but when Laura finished her maternity leave, I was the one who woke up before 6, took the bus to get there, made breakfast for the children, changed diapers, took them to and from the daycare. I did this for 3 years. 3 No salary, no vacations, no thank you card. Ah, on Mac's first birthday, I gave him a teddy bear that I bought with my own money and recorded an audio with my voice telling a bedtime story. I never saw the toy being used. In the second year, they didn't even ask me for help at the party. They told me that they were going to do just something small. I arrived at the house without warning, and there were more than 20 people in the yard, including Peter's parents, sitting comfortably under the new awning that, by the way, I had also helped to pay for. Peter began to make comments that were previously subtle, but then began to take shape. You're already getting forgotten. Aren't you? Me. Aren't you? Mrs. Virginia? You don't have to worry about these things. Let us solve it. You have to rest more. And Laura repeated, "Oh," he repeated as if it were true. Ah, Mom. Nowadays everything is more modern. Mom, things have changed. You don't understand how it works? As if my age had erased the woman I was. As if time had made me dumb. Until one day, inside the kitchen of their house, Laura corrected me in front of Emily. I was teaching the girl to count in Spanish with those little wooden blocks. I've always done this with Laura too. But this time she said, Mom, please. Here at home, we are focusing on English. Those words confuse her head. I stood there, holding the pad with the number 3 in my hand, not knowing where to stick my face. Emily looked at me confused. I felt like an intruder. It was then that I understood. I was no longer the grandmother. Neither did the mother. And Norne touched Saint-Laurent. I was a piece they wore when I needed to, and hid when they wanted to look modern. But what they didn't know is that, even in silence, I saw everything, every deviation of the gaze, each message disguised as a joke. And he did. Wow. I kept it like someone who gathers wood in the cold. And when winter comes, you will see that I have not forgotten anything. Do you want to know what happened on my grandchildren's next birthday? I'll tell you. And it was there that the wound began to bleed for real. I remember very well what my routine was like at that time. The alarm clock barely rang, and I was already up, preparing a simple coffee before leaving. It was almost 6 in the morning when I left my house. Oh no, oh die, oh catch the patchy. With that cold Savannah air still touching my face, I took the 6:30 and was always sitting at the same window, the one near the middle, where you could see the open fields of U.S. Route 17. I liked that silence. It was the only moment of the day that was mine alone. He arrived at Laura's house even before the children woke up. I opened the door with the key they gave me some time ago, hung my coat behind the door, and went straight to the kitchen. I prepared Mac's coffee the way he liked it. Small pancakes with banana and a little cinnamon. Emily preferred toast with honey. I knew every taste, every morning, now, and even exhausted, tired of the pain in my legs, the complaining spine. I did everything with affection, because there was still my role to take care, serve, love. Wow. But little by little, the affection that warmed me began to cool down. First came the well, let you know if you need it this week. Then the you don't need to come today. Peter will work from home. From a full week, I got 2 days. Then one, until the invitations stopped. I spent days waiting for a message. And when it arrived, it was just to ask for something practical. Mom, None. Can you transfer $100? The card has expired. New. Mom. Do you know where the digital thermometer is? I think it stayed with you. It was never to know if I was well. If I needed something, it was only when they needed it. And when offered to visit, hearing it today, I can't. The house is a little messy, hurt more than I wanted to admit. What about birthdays? These ones were different too. There was a day. Max turned 5. I bought him a beautiful bicycle. Red. With the blue basket in front. Oh, just like the ones he saw in the drawings. I spent almost $300. Paid in installments on my store card. My pawn. I wrapped the box with shiny paper and took it on the day. When I arrived, the party was already moving. Oh, there was a pogo stick in the garden. Monopile. Loud music. A lot of people. But no one seemed to expect me. They hurriedly said hello to me and said, you can leave the gifts there in the corner. No one opened mine. No one saw the sparkle in Mac's eyes when they tried it. The other day, when I asked, Laura said, oh, listen, any chance? He already had a bike, but thank you. Mom, it was like being slapped with a kid glove. From then on, I started to store the toys in the closet without giving them away. Christmas that year, then. This one I will never forget. I spent weeks preparing the gifts. I bought Laura a French perfume, the same one she commented on in a store. Pro, Peter, Mom. An expensive toolbox I saw him researching online. For children, educational tablets, games, books, almost $3,000 in total. And I took everything with affection, with golden ribbon, with love wrapped in each bow. I arrived early, as always, and when I entered one, the first thing I heard was, Mom, I didn't need to bring so much. The children already have everything. I smiled on the outside. Inside, now, me so. It was as if they had torn a piece of me. I sat in the corner of the sofa while they opened other packages, took pictures, thanked the relatives next to Peter. Wow, my gifts were put aside. No word. The children didn't even know which one belonged to whom. And the pearl necklace I gave Laura, my grandmother's. She looked at for 2 seconds and said, maybe it's best to save this for when Emily grows up. He didn't even put it around his neck. It was there, that night, that I understood. I had become invisible, a ghost of flesh and blood that only appeared when it was useful. And the worst thing is that, For a long time, I accepted this. I accepted because I thought that love was just that. Sacrifice, wait, swallow hard, hurrying. But on that Christmas night, sitting in my armchair alone, with the supper left over from the day before, something inside me began to change. And if you've been listening to me this far, it's because maybe some part of it has also hurt you. And let me tell you something. This story will still turn around. There's still a lot to happen. And when it does, no one will believe it. No. Because when contempt becomes routine, we start to get used to the little. But it only takes one spark, just one, to ignite everything that has been dormant. And that spark, she was closer than I imagined. Can you guess what made me wake up for good? Because it was on an ordinary day, a day when, unintentionally, I heard something I was never supposed to have heard. And then everything began to fall apart. 2 months before that Mother's Day, no, my body began to give way. I had already been feeling a strange weakness, a tiredness that did not go away, even with rest. I thought it was just another virus of the season, one of those that go away with tea and a blanket. But that week, my body betrayed me in a way I didn't expect. The fever came suddenly, and when I saw it, then I was already shivering under the blankets, with chest pain, a heavy head, and a loneliness that was colder than the savannah winter. I called Laura. I remember exactly what I said. Daughter, I just wanted to see if you could stop by with a soup. Anything. I'm very bad. Oh, they still step how I'm untouched to him. On the other side, now, a short silence, and then we see I have planned the dog how. Oh, Mom, right today, Peter is in the middle of a huge project, and in double shift this week. Try ordering something through Uber Eats. Okay? And he hung up. And the country so told you. Like this, without even asking my temperature, without even saying, take care. It was 5 days. 5 long days of pain, fever, and silence. The food, when it came, was what I could reheat in the microwave with the strength I had left. I slept, sitting in the armchair in the living room, because lying down made my chest hurt, and it was the neighbor, Donna, an 82-year-old widow who barely sees properly, who appeared. He heard me coughing out the window and knocked on the door. He entered unceremoniously, brought a chicken soup, covered me properly with a shawl, and even read 2 psalms with me. And even with trembling hands, it brought me the care I expected from my own daughter. No. It is at these times that we understand what really matters. Who really cares? When I got better, I tried to call Laura. I just wanted to say that I was better, that I had missed her. And she answered in a hurried voice, I'm casted in a adulted sold young. Hi, Mom. I'm entering the hospital now. How are you? I said yes, that she was already better. And before I could say anything else, she said, Great. I'll call you later. Okay? and he never called. And, but to be honest, he didn't even ask how I was, if I needed to go to the doctor, if I had a fever. Well, nothing. It's strange how certain wounds don't hurt right away. They itch, bother, they burn lightly, well, but they stay there, like a crack in the glass of the soul, until one day burst. And I think that's where it started. The deepest crack, the one that no longer heals. Sometimes we wonder how it can be so invisible to those we love so much. How can love become an obligation? How can we go from lap to weight? And I ask myself, is this more common than I thought? Because if you've also felt this silent abandonment, this silence that hurts more than harsh words, comment here so I know. He tells me I understand you, or it's true. Because sometimes all we need is not to feel alone in this pain. But that was just the beginning. Because just when I thought I had seen the worst, Mother's Day came, and with it, that card. And after the card, after him, my phone rang, and the voice on the other end made me stop breathing for a second. Can you imagine what someone can say after such a humiliation? Because what came next, everything changed. And I'll tell you, that early morning, it was as if the whole world had turned its back on me. I couldn't sleep. I stayed there, sitting in the kitchen, with only the hood light on and the sound of the clock marking every second of my pain. The card was still on the table, the same pink envelope that Laura handed me with that forced smile, as if she already knew the poison she was giving me. I read it again, for the 10th time. Perhaps roses are red, violets are blue. You are a burden. Nobody wants you. The paper was already wet from my tears, all crooked, with the edge crumpled. But still, I couldn't throw it away. It was like a printed reminder of what I had tried to ignore for so long. From what, deep down, I already knew. They no longer saw me as a mother. They saw me as a burden. Do you know when the heart gets tired of being beaten and decides to shut up? I entered this state, a silence that was not of pain. It was of decision. I stood up slowly, as if my feet knew something important was going to happen. I went to my room, pulled out the old wooden box that was in the back of the closet. I didn't know if it was in the back of the closet. Behind my church dresses, that box had everything that mattered. Certificates, name, Antosh, receipts, letters, records. I opened it and started rummaging, not knowing exactly what I was looking for, until I found it. It was a plastic briefcase, one of those with elastic bands, with a Florida seal, kind of faded. Inside, a deed in my name, dated 1996, Uncle Ernesto's inheritance. He was my father's brother and had moved to Cape Coral after he retired from the Navy. We hardly spoke. He sent me Christmas cards with photos of the sunset and a short phrase, "Never forget that the sea holds secrets that only silence understands." I thought it was beautiful, but I never quite understood what he meant. The fact is that, no, when he died, when he soon, he left his little house to me, and me, one or two, I'd kawa, tasted right off the cart, our attention, bogged down with the care of teenage Laura, with the bills, with the mourning for Antonio's death. I didn't even pay attention. Oh, sarcastic. I kept the paper as if it were just another unused thing. But that morning, looking at that yellowed scripture, something woke up. No. It was as if that paper said, no, you've got nowhere to go. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. No, it was not revenge. I didn't want to make anyone pay. I just wanted stop paying the price. I wanted to give myself the right to live without fear of being rejected, without shrinking myself to fit into the space that others gave me. I went to the kitchen, put some water to heat up, and made a chamomile tea with a drizzle of honey. I sat down again. Won't I do? Now, with the deed paper in my hands and the torn card next to it. There, nodded Count Selwyn. In that contrast between what I represented to my daughter and what my uncle had entrusted to me, the embryo of a plan was born. I was going to visit that house. I was going to see with my own eyes if that piece of ground still existed, if it could be my new beginning. That was it. A start. Because if I stayed there, in that routine of being ignored, of giving myself without being seen, I was going to languish in silence. I know it may seem like an exaggeration, that there are people who would say, "Moo, soon, bandits to was, oh, she was just hurt. It will soon pass." But no, there are pains that do not go away. They transform us. They wake us up. And that night was my awakening. Now, there's Adonai, the cartoon basic of the sun. Among the papers, I also found a letter from my mother, written shortly before she died. The lyrics are shaky, but full of sweetness. She said, "Send, daughter, leave mine, and serve as a digital. Never forget that you came from strong women, that our worth is not measured by how much we endure in silence, but by the moment we choose not to accept anymore." I cried. No, cloud. I cried softly, with my head leaning against the envelope, smelling the old smell of the paper as if it were a hug from her. And I swear at that time, it was as if she said, "Go, Virginia, one down, no tonight." I said, "Just, it's time." I opened my old laptop, the one I only used to look at pictures of the kids. I searched for the house on Google Maps, looked up the address. Read about Cape Coral, a quiet, canal-filled town where the elderly live in peace and no one is seen as a nuisance. And I thought, is it too late to start over? But before I went ahead with this plan, I needed to fix a few things, cut some ties, remake others, and, mainly, to find out who I was, without the role of Laura's mother. I spent so much time dedicating myself to her, to that family, new calm, that I had forgotten about myself. From Virginia, of my dreams, my limits, my desires, me, and now, new. Now it was time to find myself again. But to do that, I would have to face a difficult truth. I would have to look at my daughter, not with the eyes of a mother blinded by love, but with the eyes of a wounded but firm woman. I would have to say no, and who knows, until I cut the cord that I fed myself for years. The dawn passed slowly, but inside me, everything ran fast. A plan was formed, ways, and with him, oh, perhaps I, a sparkle in my eye that I hadn't recognized for a long time. Was it hope? Was it freedom? It was something new, something that was yet to come, now. And you, have you ever had this moment of rupture? That point where everything changes and you know you'll never go back to the way you were before? Because my Ned it started there. But the real movement, he comes the next morning when the phone rang. What did you? I'll come. And the voice on the other side. It made me take a deep breath before answering. Who called? And why? I'll tell you. Because it was there that everything really began to turn. The phone rang at 7:42 a.m. I still had the mug of tea in my hands, sitting in the same chair where I spent the night. The light came timidly through the kitchen window, illuminating the papers that still covered the table. Why, for a second, my heart raced. I thought it was Laura, but it was only an unknown number. But it was only an unknown number. I let it play. He no longer answered any calls. Not after all. I dropped it in the mailbox and took a deep breath, because in that instant, something inside me took hold. A voice, almost whispered, told me, it's over now. Virginia, you've done enough. Now, in child, when I sitting a cloud. Enough is enough. I took a blank sheet of paper from the notebook I used to write down the fare list and started writing. A column. What I gave. Another. What Kelly had down. And Talbot. Another. What I received. I wrote it without haste. But each line was a stab and a release. Laura's wedding dress. $7. 0. The down payment for the house in Richmond Hill. Wanted you each and car. I want sale P. $25. The children's room furniture. Why? $6. 800. The babysitter for 3 months pays when she said she couldn't do it. $2. 400. Monthly aid in silence. $300 here. $500 there. Ooh. All written down. No. Adding up slowly until it surpasses $85. 0. Not to mention the market Sundays. The sweets sold. One day I sit here and the sleepless nights, the calloused hands, the invisible patches that only a mother knows how to sew. But do you know what weighed most on that sheet? Which I didn't get. Oh, an apology. A thank you. Mom. A sincere hug at Christmas. When Ted Woody Floyd found. A note from the children, written with affection. Oh, and, above all, presents. I gave my whole life to them, and in return, what? I became nothing, absurd. But in that role, that morning, say she went with you, for the first time in many years, I didn't cry. I planned. The pain was still there, of course, but it didn't crush me anymore. She moved me. It gave me a lucidity that I hadn't felt since I was young. It was as if each memory had turned on a light, and in that light, I saw the way. I was leaving. Oh, not in a scandalous way, not with fights or speeches. I was going to do it as I had always lived, with silence, with firmness, and with dignity. I took my will, which was in a black folder inside the hallway closet. I read it calmly, noted its channel. There it was written that everything would be for Laura and the children. The house in Savannah, one cow, the savings, the belongings, even some old land that my father left me and that no one knew was still in my name. And there, alone in that kitchen that listened to me so much, I decided no more. I took a blue pen and a new sheet. I declare, of my own free will, my decision to update this will, and I kept changing. The Savannah house I was going to sell. The savings, invest in a fund with my name. The goods, direct to donations, hospitals, nursing homes, sewing projects for immigrant women. Everything that had to do with me, with the woman I was. The Cape Coral house? It was going to be my new home. A home where no one would treat me like a burden, where I could grow old in peace. I closed everything carefully. Each document went back to the wooden box, but now in a different place. A place of decision, no longer of memory. And then, I got up. I looked at my house with farewell eyes. The picture frames, the embroidery on the cushions, the faded carpet in the living room. Everything had been in love one day, but now it had to be freedom. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. How do you subscribe here to the channel? It makes more difference than you think. No one famous, but if my story touches a single soul on the other side, it's worth every word told. The phone rang again. Laura, this time on dial. But I let it play, and it was the first time I felt peace when I didn't answer. Because now, it was my turn to take care of myself. But before leaving, I still needed to solve one last thing. One last visit. A conversation that I had been postponing for years. And maybe a farewell. Can you imagine what a mother would say to her daughter when you no longer expect anything from her? That's right. I said, "Mwah." And what she answered, "It will surprise you." The next morning, I put on my navy blue dress, the more understated, gold-buttoned one, and left the house with the briefcase under my arm. It was not just any day. It was the first day of my new life. I took the 9. I took the 9:15 a.m. The bus sat in the row on the right side. Me. where the sun shines softer, and it got off 2 blocks before Regent's Bank. I wanted to walk a little, to feel my firm steps on the ground. Oh, as if to say to the world, I am no longer anyone's. I am mine. I entered the bank calmly, greeted the receptionist, and was attended by a girl named Tasha, who looked me in the eyes the whole time. Oh, what can I help you with, Mrs. Nair? Toned down, Virginia. And I took a deep breath before saying, I want to cancel the automatic transfer of my account, the one that goes every month to my daughter. No. She hesitated. No. Asked if it was certain, and I confirmed it with my look. I also asked to close the joint account that Laura used for emergencies. No emergency would give me back the lost years. And when Tasha printed the receipt and handed it to me with that it's done, I felt a strange lightness, as if an invisible thread had been cut, a thread that sucked me in silence. From there, I went straight to the Montgomery Street Registry office. I already knew that old building, made of red brick, with the smell of old paper mixed with reheated coffee. I waited 30 minutes at the reception. Meanwhile, I took the old will out of the folder. I read each line one last time. More serious? Happens to you. There, he said that everything mine would go to Laura, that this savings would stay with her. The house, the land, and even my objects of sentimental value, such as my mother's reliquary. I gave everything in life, and it would still be in debt. What an irony. But that day, sitting in that hardwood chair, I gave myself the right to rewrite my story. I was called by a guy named Jared. Young, educated. No. Shall we update your will? And I said, come on. Yes, but today I want to write as someone who respects himself. He smiled without understanding, and we started. I wrote clearly. Savannah's house would be sold now. The amount donated to a fund to support abandoned elderly women. Yes, because I discovered that I am not the only one, that there are other Virgos out there, quiet, suffering in silence, not knowing that they can start over. I also created a trust for my grandchildren, but with one clear condition. One, they will only have access when they turn 25. And more, just keep in touch with me in a genuine way. It doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't have to be with gifts. It just needs to be with truth. When Jared finished typing everything and passed it on to me to proofread, I read it with teary eyes, because there, me, in that new role, was the woman I had become. For the first time in many years, I felt in control. For the first time, it was not the guilty mother, the available grandmother, the disposable lady. Now, I was Virginia, a woman who built a lot, who loved a lot, but that he learned to stop. And sometimes, stopping giving is the bravest act a mother can take. No. There is a moment in life when we realize that we are no longer trying to be loved. It's just trying to exist with dignity. And it is at this point that everything changes. So, if you're here with me so far, stay, because the most remarkable moment in this story is yet to come, and it's not revenge. It is justice with elegance. I left the registry office with the folder renewed. The sun hit his face differently. The city seemed quieter, Minuarto, and I, for the first time, walked without weight. But as soon as I got home, the cell phone rang. How? And on the other side, one, a voice I hadn't heard in months said my name with an urgency that chilled me. It was the beginning of a request, but what she wanted. You need to hear this from my mouth, because what happened next, to this day, it takes my breath away. Away. I returned home that late afternoon with tired feet, but my heart firm as I had not felt for a long time. The briefcase with the rewritten documents was on my lap, and the bus swayed gently through the streets of Savannah, as if cradling me in a silent embrace. When I arrived, I took off my shoes at the door, made my black coffee very strongly, and sat at the kitchen table. When did you warm on the noctiers? The orange light of the sunset hit the lace curtains that I sewed myself, and for a moment everything seemed calm. But there was one thing I needed to finish. Review the old papers, gather receipts, notes, and evidence that would reinforce what I knew, which for years I was the only one who gave it. I took the wooden box that I always kept in the top cabinet, the one that I only opened when I needed to solve important things. In it, there were photos of the little Laura, with her knees scraped and her smile open, letters from my Antonio when he worked at night as a janitor, and a collection of extracts that I had been keeping since the times of tightness. I started to separate everything in order. Years, values, details. It was when my eyes hit a receipt that froze me. It was from a furniture store called Grand Interiors, dated May 2021. Total amount, well, $3. 200. Payment made via debit. But I never went into that store. I never bought leather sofa, let alone embroidered cushions from France. At the time, I remember Laura commenting that she was going to renovate the room. We are redecorating. Peter wants something more refined. No, he said. Hell, as if it were a distant subject. Now it made sense. The money had left my account without warning, no order. Naturally, nibs kept. I found another recurring debt, $89 per month since 2019. A signature of artisanal wines, the ones Peter bragged so much about offering at dinners. It always said this one came from California. Limited edition. And I, silly, now Captain Herod, smiled, thinking it was a luxury paid for by them. It was mine, with my money, without my consent. The anger didn't come all at once. It came like a slow, warm wave, starting in the stomach and up to the throat. I got up slowly, unwound. Went to the mirror in the hallway and looked at myself. Virginia, you're not stupid. You trusted, and they abused it. Mom. I said it out loud, and it was like taking a weight off your shoulders, like breaking the last link in a chain that I had allowed to be placed. At that time, an old memory came to me from my mother, Nain. She said, "You, daughter, and Dale Warden Heeds Kaufwang, those who are very silent, lose even their name. Don't be that woman, Ma." And I kept quiet for too long. I made myself small to fit into what was expected of me, but enough because there are memories that mark us in a way that not even time erases. And sometimes they are the ones who push us towards what needs to be done. Have you ever had a memory like this? That appeared out of nowhere, like a snap, and changed everything? If you've experienced this, comment here. He tells me I've felt that, or I know how it is. I want to know that there are more people who understand. Because today, him opening my trunk, and maybe yours is also waiting for it. I kept rummaging through the papers and found them even more absurd. Amazon purchases made with my card, expensive gifts I've never seen, and even a streaming subscription I've never watched. All in my name. Indignation has become certainty. That cruel card I received on Mother's Day was not just a bad joke. It was the reflection of years of silent abuse, disguised as normalcy. They got used to my generosity, and when I started to weigh in on expenses, they decided I was a burden. But I saw it. Late, Mulner, oh, but I saw, and that's when the guilt began to die. That guilt that made me think that maybe I had overreacted, that maybe he was too sensitive. No, I was too blind. But now I saw it. I saw everything, and each receipt was a brick in the wall that I began to raise between myself and the past. I closed the box firmly. The folder was now complete. Proofs, documents, truths, and in my mind, a clear plan. I wasn't going to confront. I wasn't going to ask for answers. I was just going to leave with dignity. My name, House Sebo Gwerkiant, Herschel with dignity, with silence, and with justice. But first of all, there was still one last gesture, one that might seem small, one, but would have great consequences. And that's what I prepared the next morning. An envelope, a ticket, and a warning, because even the sweetest mothers have a limit, and when he is crossed, well, my dear, my Nauten, then those who remain silent no longer consent. Can you imagine what was written on that note? I'll tell you, no, but I warn you, it hurt her more than me. That Friday afternoon, Mom, I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of white paper in front of me and a blue pen that I had kept for years, the kind that glides on steadily, without fail. Tolerance. I looked out the window before I started. The sky was clear, and the épées on the sidewalk swayed slowly with the wind. It seemed that time had stopped, just to hear me. He did not tremble. He did not hesitate. I knew exactly what I needed to say, because it wasn't a letter of anger. It was a letter of liberation. I started with Laura's daughter, no texibion, adianunci. I wrote like this, without formality, but also without artificial tenderness. For a long time, I waited for you to see me, not as someone who was there out of obligation, but as someone who made himself absent so that you could be a presence. Maybe you've never stopped to remember that. While you slept peacefully in your adolescence, I sewed until 2 in the morning, or that he sold Brigadero door to door to complete the value of his new uniform. And that's okay. Well, Mother doesn't charge. Mother delivers. But even love needs respect to stay alive. Why, Con, I told you about the wedding dress. The first rental. Once. You might sent. The nights I took care of the children with the flu so you could sleep. I told you about the times Peter looked me up and down with that tone of contempt, disguised as sarcasm. And you, Laura, you just looked away. I told him about the card. Nisan ein on. The phrase that I will never forget. Your burden. Nobody wants you. And I asked, with all the calmness in the world, Daughter, Ned let him seek out. How can I said? At what point did you start to believe this? The second letter went to Peter. Shorter, not, but firmer. You never called me Mom, and I never expected that. But I also never imagined that I would see myself as a nuisance. I spoke of the signature wines, the luxury furniture paid for with my sweat, his condescension, well, always veiled, always shrouded in irony. And he said, "La, you won my daughter, but you never had to lose me. Today, he chose the opposite. At the end of both letters, I wrote the same sentence. From today on, I will no longer be your source, nor money, nor guilt, nor care. Whoever wants my presence will have to earn it, not demand it. And I signed it with my full name, Virginia Morales Santiago. With pride, firmly, Leo went song, out. I didn't send it by email. I didn't take a picture. I didn't make a scandal. I took the 2 envelopes, sealed them carefully, wrote the names by hand, or Sue, and on Saturday morning went to their home in Richmond Hill. Was it she? I parked across the street. The children were playing in the front yard. Max was building a castle of blocks, and Emily was running with a bow in her hair. I smiled, but stayed inside the car. It was not a time for hugs or waves. It was a moment of rupture. Wow. I waited until no one was around. I got out of the car, walked to the black iron mailbox, and put the 2 envelopes inside. My fingers trembled just for a second. After silence, I walked back, got in the car, and before starting it, I unlocked my phone. I opened the agenda. I touched on Laura's name. Block contact. Then, Peter. Block contact. The cell phone was silent for the first time in years. That kind of silence brought me peace. I drove back home to Savannah slowly, his hands steady on the steering wheel. the radio off, and all that echoed in my head was, "It's over. I'm honey town." Not like someone who lost, but as someone who finally chose himself. Why? You know, there's a strength that is born when we stop begging for affection. When you understand that love that needs to be begged for is not love, it is prison. And I wasn't made to die in captivity. I was made to flourish, even if it's late, even if it hurts. But look, the story is not over yet. Because when you cut a bow, the other end usually despairs. And the next day, oh, something unexpected happened. Something that started with a sound. 3 knocks on my door. Can you imagine who it was? Well then, prepare your heart. It's what I heard in that meeting. It was the confirmation of everything I needed to know. I woke up early that Monday. Well, the sky was still pale, and the street was silent, as if the city was giving me time to say goodbye. No, I took one last cup of the coffee that I loved so much to prepare there, in that kitchen that was witness to so much silence. The table was still set with an old crocheted tablecloth, one now, and the tiles on the wall looked more yellowish than ever. But I didn't cry, because that day I wasn't losing a home. I was getting myself back, with the help of Mrs. Adams, a broker with a sweet voice and hands always busy with papers. I sold my house in Savannah for a price even higher than expected. She looked at me on the day of the signing and said, "Did you do everything yourself?" I smiled. "Yes, my daughter. Nay, I know what's it sound. Tada, when the night choose it or two. Alone, known, but not empty, with the money from the sale. Whoa, I paid off small debts, donated what was needed, and set aside an amount just for me, for my plans, my new routine. I rented a small truck, the exact size of my new life. Trey, a strong and kind young man in his early 20s, came to help me with the furniture. Neon, you can let me take care of the cabinet. Mrs. Well, Nash's you, Nashabat and Tam, what him to the copper de Grold Cow. Virginia, oh, I know, and you see, I like a noise sick about. He said, "Why now? Ninety how crawled out tell." And I thought it was beautiful that someone treated something that was mine with such care. The trip to Cape Coral took almost 7 hours. Trey drove, and I stared out the window, remembering everything and nothing at the same time. I remembered Antonio taking me dancing on Sundays, Laura in a braid sleeping in the back seat, the cakes I took to the school festival, and I thought, how much life can fit in a small truck. When we arrived, the inherited house was simple, single story, wagon always you, with a wooden balcony and peeling paint on the edges. The garden seemed to have given up blooming, but it only took one look for me to see. It was mine. I entered, and the smell of an old house welcomed me like a grandmother's lap. It had heavy furniture, faded carpets, but it also had space. And, Mom, I haven't said you should tell. Above all, silence. Not that cold silence of one who has been forgotten, but the silence of one who can finally hear himself. In the days that followed, where now would you all set winter dots? She will or seers. I transformed everything with my hands. I painted the walls with light tones, cream and lavender. Highs. I took off heavy curtains and let the sun in. In the backyard, I planted white lilies, the same ones my mother loved. I swept, scrubbed, aired the cabinets. Each task was a ritual of rebirth. The neighbors, almost all retired, came to introduce themselves with kindness. Mrs. May brought a pumpkin cake. Mr. Jonathan offered to help with the fence, and everyone called me Miss Virginia, as if I had always belonged there. I started waking up early, no longer with the weight of anxiety, but with the singing of birds and the smell of the sea that came from afar. Time had slowed down, and with him, my chest too. On a Sunday afternoon, I sat on the porch with a book I'd gotten from the local book club. I crossed my legs, took a sip of fresh lemonade, and looked up at the sky. There, Nidiwantam, alone and whole, I understood what peace was. A peace that did not come from the presence of others, but from the absence of what hurt. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to explain myself, shape myself, restrain myself. No, I was just me, and that was enough. But look, silence also has its surprises, because it was just when I thought nothing more would come of that old life that an envelope arrived, hand addressed, no sender, aloud, thick paper, firm ink, and inside, inside, there was something that made me get up slowly, close the front door, sit on the couch, and take a deep breath, because what was there? No, what else? It was not an apology. It was something else, something that would put everything to the test. Do you have any idea what it might be? Because to this day, I wonder if that envelope arrived late or at the right time. 2 weeks had passed since I hung my last painting on the new wall. The house in Cape Coral already smelled of home, one of those who welcome without demanding anything in return. My garden was beginning to bloom with white lilies, and the porch swing already knew the rhythm of my body at dusk. I was at peace, a silent, well-deserved peace, built with every gesture of courage I had. But one Monday morning, while I was separating the books from the old shelf, I remembered the old cell phone, the one I left off since the move. It was kept in a drawer, along with the key to the old house and a photo of the little Laura with her father. I grabbed the device, sat on the bed, and took a deep breath before turning it on. The screen flashed, loaded slowly, and then came the numbers. 17 missed calls, all of the same number. Laura? I went to the kitchen, prepared a fresh coffee, and returned to the room with the cup in my hands. I sat down again. I opened the voicemails. The first was with a trembling voice. Wow. Mom, Mia, what happened? Why did you disappear like that? Is this serious? The second, more nervous? Have you gone crazy? Peter is saying you freaked out. What kind of madness is this to cut everything without warning? The third was lower. almost a whisper. "Nee, Mom, I'm sorry if I said something wrong. The boys are asking about you. And the others. Oh, nah." The others mixed confusion, fright, and a panic that they never showed when I was sick. Alone, you know, as just gone at you, or humiliated at the dinner table. Wow. Each message was like a delayed echo, as if they only noticed my absence when my presence, so guaranteed before, turned into silence. I didn't answer. I just listened. No, take it easy. Clearly. And in the end, Mom, I deleted them all because the sound of empty regret is just noise. The next day, Mom, I received an envelope brought by the lady in front. It came from your old address. Forwarded? Nay. It was in the mailbox of the lady's house. The lyrics on the front were Laura's. Thick paper, just like the one I used for my letter. I opened slowly. Inside, she would start by apologizing. It talked about pressure, how demanding Peter was, how crushed she felt between her children, work and married life. On top, he said that he never wanted to hurt me, that the card was Peter's idea, and that he only allowed it because he thought it would be funny. Funny. She used that word. I stood still for a while, my eyes fixed on this sentence. And the most curious, that's what came after. The boys miss you. Emily doesn't understand why you didn't show up for the recital. Max asked about the lemon cake. I closed the letter. I felt a tightness in my chest, not out of sadness, but out of realization. That woman who wrote, that was the same one who allowed people to laugh at me in front of their children, who discarded me in silence year after year. And now that he has lost the comfort of my help, he has begun to remember that I exist. But look, repentance without change is not forgiveness. It's theater, and I'm no longer anyone's audience. I looked out the window, saw the lilies dancing in the wind, and thought, how many times have I asked to be seen, to be treated with the same affection I gave? And now that I'm gone, that my absence weighs on my pocket and arms, now they want me to come back with a wave. No, no more. Hunches, they're asham, awadribuge, and sewasadarka. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up, and let's make this story reach those who need it, because there are many women out there living this same silence. And maybe hearing this here, she will find the courage to choose herself. I closed the envelope again, put it inside a box, along with the statements, the copy of the letters I wrote, and the last photo with my grandchildren. Not as a hurt, but as a memory, because memory is what prevents us from going back to what hurt us. And then, that same night, something unexpected happened, something that did not come by letter, well, nor by phone. It came from where I least expected it, and when it arrived, it made me realize that all was not lost. Could it be that, even after so much pain, there is still room for a true reunion? I didn't know it myself until that moment. The afternoon sun was already beginning to tilt when I heard the knocks on the gate. 3. Madame Natchiotic Farm. How do you discharge? 3. Very firm. What about? Twice detention Lord. It wasn't the postman, nor the neighbor. My heart, which had been so calm, nay, gave a strange start. Well, I walked slowly, wiping my hands on my apron, and there, on the other side of the white gate, what? She was Laura, and my zero from a chair, alone, her hair tied up anyway, her eyes red, one, and a small bag in tow. We stared at each other for a few seconds, like two strangers who remembered each other too much. I opened the gate. Now, he said nothing. I just turned around and walked to the garden. She followed me silently. I sat on the wooden bench under the hibiscus tree, the same one where I usually read in the late afternoon. She stood for a while, then bent down, sitting on the grass. Near my feet, I was sitting like a lost child. The first few minutes were just the sound of wind and leaves, until she started crying, a deep cry, without disguise, and between sobs, the words came, "Mom, I made a mistake." And still calm. She was silent for a while, then continued, "Well, I some mine." Peter was furious when he learned of the will. How? He said that I let the situation get out of control, that you're doing this to get revenge. She looked at me as someone looking for confirmation in the eyes of those who no longer know how to trust. I didn't say anything. I just kept standing there, listening. I didn't know about the debits to his account. Well, she said, quietly, he took care of those things. Her voice oscillated between guilt and justification, as if looking for a space where regret could fit without responsibility. Children ask about you. Emily sleeps with the teddy bear you gave. Max wanted to show you the school's reading medal. Her eyes watered again, but I kept mine dry, because there are times when our tears have dried inside. I waited until she said everything she had come to say, and then, with the sequel so, when the silence grew again between us, I spoke quietly but firmly. You didn't miss me, Laura. He missed what I gave. She lowered her head. Okay. And in this gesture, I saw the girl who one day asked me to stay in bed for another 5 minutes when I went out to sew. But I also saw the woman who allowed people to laugh at me, and I didn't know which of the two was there anymore. She tried to get closer, hesitantly, and extended her arms to hug me. For a second, my body recoiled, but then left. Not for her. For me, well, it was a hug that didn't hurt anymore. A gesture of goodbye, not physical, but emotional. Because we can even forgive, but forgetting the weight that someone has put on our shoulders. We can't. She got up, grabbed her suitcase, and walked to the gate. Before leaving, no, he turned around and asked, "Can I call you once in a while?" I looked at her and said, "Wow," with all the serenity I could find. "You can, but only if it's to ask how I'm doing, not what I can do for you." She nodded, her eyes full of something I could no longer decipher, and it was gone. I closed the gate with both hands. The Florida wind blew hard at that moment, as if carrying with it the old pain that for so many years had inhabited my chest. I stood there, how, feeling the air touch my face, and for the first time since everything, my heart was no longer heavy, because I understood that dignity is not asked for, it is taken back. And there's still one last thing I need to tell you, something that came to me in the following days, in such an unexpected way, so beautiful that I almost didn't believe it. A small but powerful gesture, coming from where I least imagined. Want to know what it was? Then hold my hand a little longer, niece, because that part, this one made me cry again. But for another reason. That morning, I was sweeping the yard, pulling dry leaves around the lilies that were beginning to bloom again. What? When I heard the whistle of my new cell phone. It was an email, something I hardly received since I retired from that old life. I opened it out of curiosity, and the sender's name made my heart shudder. William Sanders, an accountant from Savannah that I barely remembered, but who, years ago, helped me regularize some statements when Peter insisted on investing for me. I remembered the conversation as if it were today. Trust me, mother-in-law, Bitcoin is the future. I, without understanding much, signed where he told me. William had warned me at the time, but I trusted my daughter, and that's why it hurt so much. The message began with a respectful and direct greeting. Donna Virginia, Wendy Worms, I don't know if you remember me, but I think you should know what's going on. I stood right there in the middle of the dry leaves, reading every line. He said that Peter was being investigated for tax fraud. Who, in the last 2 years, has moved considerable amounts in the names of third parties, including family members, in undeclared investments. He said that since my accounts were closed and he lost access to my name, everything fell apart. The company he pretended to keep at a distance evaporated. Cryptocurrencies, poorly managed, have turned to digital dust, and with the cards blocked and the assets seized, he now lived with Laura at his own mother's house in a suburb of Jacksonville. The same Peter who made fun of me, who laughed at the Mother's Day card. Now slept on a 3-seater sofa and drove a car borrowed from his sister-in-law. I closed the phone slowly. I sat on the bench on the porch, the same one where Laura cried at my feet days before. I looked at his hands, those hands that were once calloused from sewing, that held my daughter's head when she had a fever, that cleaned her house without ever charging, and for the first time, I felt that time had done for me what I never wanted, but perhaps needed. Wide not out of revenge, but for balance. Life didn't want me to scream. He wanted me to leave the scene, and what remained was only true. He doesn't smile. I didn't vibrate. I didn't wish harm to anyone. I just felt a deep peace, as if some part of me had been put back in the right place, because I always knew what we plant, sooner or later, comes back with the exact weight of the seed. Wow. And they planted contempt, greed, wow, condi, this selfishness. I planted silence and dignity. Deep down, no, I knew that it wouldn't bring my family back as it was before. But also, was that ever real? Sometimes, what we call love is just a repetition of sacrifice. And when we stop giving ourselves without limit, we discover who really saw us and who only used us. At night, I went to bed early. The wind was blowing hard, and the windows were tinkling softly. I stared at the ceiling for a while, thinking about how life is a two-way road. You can insist on a path for years, but all it takes is a new curve, and everything changes. And the truth? It's just that that curve had a name, smell, why, and a new address. It was Cape Coral. It was my home. It was me coming back to myself. But not everything had been said, because a few weeks later, a letter arrived. Only this time, it wasn't Laura's, nor Peter, and Harry. And what was inside that envelope? That yes. It moved me in a way that not even time could prepare. Do you want to know who wrote it? Just wait and see, because I didn't count on that myself. The late afternoon light lay softly on the canal, dyeing the water a gold that only silence can paint. I was there, sitting on my porch, with a cup of chamomile tea in my hands and the radio playing very softly. One of those piano songs that fill the corners of my chest. It was an ordinary day, and at the same time, it was everything I had ever hoped to feel. Peace. Not a peace bought or seated by anyone. It was the peace of someone who walked barefoot through stones and now finds a soft ground inside her. I looked around. How? The lilies I planted swayed in the breeze. The wicker rocking chair creaked slowly, and on the small table next to it rested a watercolor book with marks of my first scribbles. They are not pretty, but they are mine, and each color that runs down on the paper has a name that only I know. Courage, pain, new beginning. At the community center, I started painting on Saturday mornings. There I also met Ruth, an 80-year-old lady, widowed like me, who decided to teach me how to swim. It's never too late to learn to float. My daughter, she said, laughing, and I believed it, because it's true. We only sink when we give up on ourselves. And there, sitting in that piece of world of my own, I began to think about my whole life. The girl I went there in San Juan, with my feet in the sand and my face covered in freckles. In the young woman who crossed borders for love, who sewed dresses to survive, who smiled without money, but with dignity. I thought of the mother I tried to be firm and sweet, present even when the world seemed absent. I thought about the woman who was gradually becoming invisible within her own story. But what struck me most at that moment was not the pain. It was the crossing, because I had crossed the desert, and she was alive. You know, a while ago, I thought that justice was to make the other feel what they made us feel. But today, now are calm. I understand now. Justice is really looking in the mirror and recognizing yourself again, not as a victim, but as someone who chose to stop begging for love where there is not even respect. I'm not angry with Laura anymore, nor Peters. I have compassion, but from afar, because true love does not require constant sacrifice. It is built with presence, listening, and care, and I deserve it. I have always deserved it. And look, if there's one thing I can say to you, now that you're here listening to me until the end, it's this: never accept less than the love you would give. It doesn't matter who it comes from, son, husband, brother, hun. We give ourselves so much that sometimes we forget to harvest. But time knows, and he gives it back, not always as we want, but almost always as we need. It was almost night when the postman passed by. He waved, as usual, and left an envelope at the gate. I walked slowly there, picked up the mail, and went back to my corner. It was a simple envelope with no known sender. I opened it carefully. Inside, a folded sheet with a childish and clumsy handwriting. Grandma, I love you. I want to go visit you. Do you still remember the song you sang to put me to sleep? It was Emily's. My granddaughter. You are stunning. Nice child. 7 years. So small. So clean. So mine. I think you was all the child. His eyes watered without guilt, and the heart, for the first time in a long time, opened without fear, because sometimes what we sow, it flourishes where it least expects it. And maybe, just maybe, this story still has one last turn. Do you think I should respond? Because what came after that little letter, it changed everything again. And I'm still trying to find the words. Emily never received a response to my letter. Well, not for lack of love, you can't help it, but for excessive care. You, Malba, then she is just a child, and children should not carry the weights that adults drop on their shoulders. But I kept that note in the back of a drawer, between a blue ribbon and a broken necklace that Laura gave me when she still said that I was her best friend. From time to time, I reread it. It reminds me that not everything is lost. That true love, even wounded, even forgotten, still finds a way to sprout. Even in the driest cracks, life went on here in Cape Coral. The mornings are quiet. The smell of coffee mixes with the sound of the radio, and the days have the color of a new beginning. There is no luxury. There is no audience, but there is peace. And that's what I achieved. I burned that Mother's Day card in a white candle I bought at the corner market. I did it quietly. alone, and unceremoniously. The ashes were carried by the wind behind the house, aloud, in the river that cuts the canal, Musetian, the same river where I shed so many tears without anyone seeing. And today I smile alone, how? Because I know I'm not a burden, said how. I never was. I raised a daughter. Now, it's now some how action, and she called me a burden. But I'm lighter than ever. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, well, it's that silence can be stronger than any response. We spend our whole lives wanting to be accepted, recognized, loved. But sometimes true love begins when we choose each other, when he says enough, not with anger, but with dignity. I hope so aloud. Time does not turn back, but he has steady hands. He fixes what has become crooked. It shows who you really are. And he teaches that forgiving is not forgetting. It is no longer letting oneself be hurt in the same way. I don't wish Laura or Peter any harm. I desire awareness. And if it ever comes, let it come as it came to me, with silence, with pain, and with freedom. If you stayed here with me, listening to every bit of this story, I want to thank you from the heart. Sometimes all we need is for someone to listen, not to judge, but to understand. No. So, thank you for being that listening. If this story touched you in any way, if it reminded you of someone or some phase of your life, leave a like here as like a silent hug. And look, I feel every single one of them. If you want to come back for another coffee with me, subscribe here to the channel. Here, Hanan, every week, I tell another little piece of life. Mine, yours, ours, and comment there which city you are listening to me from. I like to imagine us scattered in so many corners, but connected by the same thread, that of memory. Oh, and it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. And if you think that was the strongest story I've ever told, just wait to hear the next one. Oh, because sometimes the greatest love of our life, it is not the one we receive. That's what, even hurt, we still choose to offer. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, we'll get go down. Each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.